Hey guys, do you play Genshin Impact? Because if you do, you don't want to do that anymore. You're going to go to prison. You think you're about that life? You sure? You sure? You ready for that? Hey, what are you doing your time for? I was playing Mihoyo's Genshin Impact, bro. You don't want that conversation. You don't want to have to explain that to your celly. Okay. Real talk now. Let's take a look at what's going on. Senate Bill 686, the Restrict Act, wants to put you in jail. Jail? You're going to prison for 20 years for using a VPN, for using a website or app that is operated by a foreign adversaries. Is that actually? Oh dang! I was gonna laugh if the freaking government document actually said a foreign adversaries. These are the foreign adversaries, by the way. Okay, let's take a look at that too. The People's Republic of China, including the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and Macau Special Administrative Region. Yeah, we could stop there for the Genshin Impact point, but let's keep reading and then we'll go back to that. Republic of Cuba, Republic of Iran, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the Russian Federation, and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela under the regime of Nicolas Maduro Moros. Okay. But yeah, China's on there. By the way, I love how this dude's phone is like almost on no battery. The meme lives even when we're talking about government documents. And speaking of memes, obviously I'm memeing around a little bit about the whole like Genshin Impact thing. This news obviously affects a lot more than that. But most people don't care about any of this stuff, man. I gotta attract them to the Genshin Impact news, right? Like people care about their gacha game and their waifus and their husbandos. I know how it is. Maybe I'm memeing around too, or maybe not. We've also got this. Criminal penalties. In general, a person who willfully attempts to commit, or willfully conspires to commit, or aids or abets in the commission of an unlawful act described in subsection A shall, upon conviction, be fined not more than $1 million USD, or if a natural person, may be imprisoned for not more than 20 years, or both. And that's simply for using a website or app operated by a foreign adversary, specifically using a VPN to use that app. I don't know, like, so if you don't use a VPN, it's fine, but if you use a VPN, it's not fine. Some of this stuff doesn't make sense, and I don't think that's fully the fault of people talking about the news. It's really the fault of the legislation itself. Like, the freaking documents are so clunky, padded with so much word bloat. It's really an awful way how legislation is made, in my opinion. Like, who's got time to read all that stuff? They really should make these proposals more brief and to the point and not bogged down with all these legalese, but you know, that's how it is. To get serious for a moment, though, wouldn't the Restrict Act apply to Genshin Impact in any game from China? I'm just using Genshin as an example. Would that not be considered operated by a foreign adversary? It, like, per their own definition, it seems like it would. And an app, that could be a game, right? Like, it's crazy. Again, obviously I'm using Genshin as a popular example that a lot of people in this community should be familiar with, but obviously this affects so much more than just Genshin Impact. Goes without saying, right? Okay, let's go to some of the comments. Dan Riley. Can you cite specific language? SB 686, the Restrict Act, seems to mostly be about providing services to foreign adversaries. I don't see anything about using services or about VPNs at all. Response, you can search up the bill name and read the whole thing. Dan Riley, I read it. I didn't see the language in the text of the bill supporting the assertions made. That's why I asked. Nova, the bill just takes way too many pages to say up to $1 million fine and 20 years imprisonment for handling American data using foreign equipment or software, with the loophole that enforcement is at discretion. So it's either a huge deal or totally toothless. Dan Riley. It is terribly drafted. After reading through it 3 times, I still have little idea what it actually does. I'd have no problem with complaints that it is extremely vague and might encompass perfectly normal activities. Adding, on reflection, I should probably just shut down. I should probably just shut and stop trying to language lawyer it. It's a terribly drafted bill. Anything that gets Congress to clarify it is good. Can't tell what it actually regulates, which is enough reason to oppose it. Let's check out this article breaking it down from reason.com. Would the Restrict Act, aka the TikTok ban bill, criminalize the use of VPNs? That's the rumor floating around about the legislation, which was introduced in the Senate by Senator Mark Warner, Democrat in Virginia, earlier this month. Warner's office has said this bill wouldn't do this, but its broad language leaves room for doubt. And the act is still insanely far-reaching and could have a huge range of deleterious... I've never heard that word before. I gotta look that up. Causing harm or damage. All right. Even if it doesn't criminalize people using a VPN to access TikTok. Side note, why do so many of these proposals, these bills, have like one name, but then like they do something completely different, or they do like 99% more than what the name suggests? Kind of deceitful, isn't it? Senator Josh Hawley, Republican in Missouri, introduced one TikTok ban bill back in January. Hawley's bill would direct the president to use the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to specifically block and prohibit all transactions and to prevent commercial operation of TikTok parent company ByteDance in the US. The latest legislation is more extensive and even more invasive. Warners restricting the emergence of security threats that risk Information and Communications Technology Act, or the Restrict Act. Well, there we go. I guess there's like the bigger breakdown than TikTok thing, to be fair. Warner's Restrict Act doesn't specifically mention TikTok or ByteDance. Rather, it would grant the U.S. Secretary of Commerce the broad power to identify, deter, disrupt, prevent, prohibit, investigate, or otherwise mitigate any risk arising from any covered transaction by any person or with respect to any property that the Secretary determines to pose an undue or unacceptable risk in several different areas. These include federal elections, information and communications tech products and services, and critical infrastructure of digital economy, as well as coercive and criminal activities by a foreign adversary that are designed to undermine democratic process and institutions or steer policy and regulatory decisions in favor of the strategic objectives of a foreign adversary to the detriment of the national security of the United States. The language describing who the Restrict Act applies to is confusing at best. The Commerce Secretary would be authorized to take steps to address risks posed by any covered transaction by any person, right? So what counts as a covered transaction? The bill states that this means a transaction in which an entity described in subparagraph B has any interest. Entities described in subparagraph B are a foreign there again with the A. Foreign adversary, an entity subject to the jurisdiction of or organized under the law of a foreign adversary, and an entity owned, directed, or controlled by either of these. Foreign adversaries can be any foreign government or regime that the Secretary deems a national security threat. It's a bit gobbledygooked, but this could be read to imply that any person using a VPN to access an app controlled by a foreign adversary or its alleged minions is subject to the Secretary's ire. Hence, anyone using a VPN to access TikTok would be in trouble, specifically subject to up to $1 million in fines, 20 years in prison, or both. Warner's office says this isn't so. Okay. Spokesperson Rachel Cohen told Newsweek that the provisions only apply when someone is engaged in sabotage or subversion of communications tech in the U.S., causing catastrophic effects on U.S. critical infrastructure, or interfering in or altering the results of a federal election in order for criminal penalties to apply. The Restrict Act targets companies like Kaspersky, Huawei, and TikTok, not individual users, she said. Why don't they define the terms more appropriately then? It's somewhat reassuring that at least Warner doesn't intend the bill's criminal provisions to apply to U.S. citizens using VPNs, but the verboten activities it lists are actually broader than those that Cohen mentioned to Newsweek. Yeah. And because the language of the bill is so expansive, it seems hard to rule out it ever being used in this way. Unless you trust the government. Continuing. We've seen many times the way federal laws are sold as attacks on big baddies like terrorists and drug kingpins, yet wind up used to attack people engaged in much more minor activities. They go on to give more of their opinion on the Restrict Act here and why they're against it. And they say the good news here is that a broad range of people and groups, including civil libertarians, conservatives, and leftists alike, have come out against banning TikTok and against the Restrict Act more generally. Some quotes here from Tucker Carlson and Senator Rand Paul as well here. If you want to read those, by all means, feel free to pause and take a look. They also like talk about this a bit and this a bit. So you can get that all at reason.com if you want. I'm going to wrap this up because like my eyes are starting to hurt, bro. I actually just cut like a whole 2-minute segment out of this video because I was reading more of the article and I kept like stuttering over myself and messing my words up because like these words are literally blending together. I got to get off the internet or something for a little while. But there's a lot of stuff to talk about, man. I still have to do another segment coming right up. So I'm going to take a short break and then get right back at it. So thank you for tuning in. Let me know what you think about this stuff in the comments. Appreciate you and your time as always. See you in the comments and in the next segment on the way.